welcome to the Dance Fit Hub. My name is Catherine. I am your fitness coach in this group. This group is for women over 55 who want to get their mojo back. And mojo can be several different things, but for most of you in this group, it is about a weight loss journey or getting stronger or just getting that motivation to keep you moving forward. So welcome into this group. We are celebrating Women's History Month. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. I hope that you are all excited because I am. I'm honored to be celebrating Women's History Month with all of you because this month we are recognizing the strength, resilience, and brilliance of women. And today I have the privilege of spotlighting someone who truly embodies all of that. And I am joined here today by my friend and amazing client, Raquel Plaza-Brown. So welcome in, Raquel. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you.
That you're here. Now, just really quick for everyone, Raquel is not only a 30-year breast cancer survivor. I got that right, yes?
Yes. Well, 31 now.
Oh, 31. Thank you for correcting me. But this month also marks a huge milestone for Raquel. It is her 1-year transformation from doing fitness, mindset, and just committing to herself. So we're also celebrating that on the back end. Today, Raquel is going to share her powerful story, where she's been, what she has overcome, and how her life has changed in this past year. So whether you're tuning in for inspiration or support or just hope, you're in the right place today. So let's get started. Raquel, again, thank you so much for being here. Let's start with your incredible story. So, can you take us back and share a little bit about your breast cancer journey and what it was like for you and what got you through it?
Well, it's 31 years now, and but 31 years ago, it was the most unexpected thing, right? I the weirdest thing is that, before I had breast cancer, because I had it at the age of 26.
Mhm.
Before I had breast cancer, I had this foreshadowing that something crazy was going to happen before I turned 30, but I didn't know what it was, and I kept sort of waiting for it, and then it appeared. Then it appeared. So for me, at age 26, to go to your gynecologist for an off, kind of an off schedule appointment and be checked. I had been there only a few months before, and being checked again and finding a lump is what started everything. So it was he who found it. I always encourage women to do their self breast exams every single month. Because at 26 you don't expect to get it, but that's what happened to me. And soon after that, you know, we waited. He said, well, maybe it'll dissolve, maybe it's nothing, but it didn't. And so he referred me to a surgeon. And at that point, they did a scan. And I remember, just him saying, well, you could leave it in there. And I said, well, why would I? And he said, well, because it's probably benign. You're 26 years old. I mean, what are the chances that it's anything that. I said,
Oh,
well, I think I'd rather, yeah, what are the chances? He was like very, uh, you know, in his mind, he was pretty confident that it was probably nothing to be concerned about. But at that point, I said, well, I just don't think that I want to have it. If I don't, if it's nothing, then let's just go and take it out. So he said, okay, well, we can do that. We can do that. So they did a scan. He saw something else. He wasn't sure because, it's, again, unlikely. So I went ahead and got a biopsy. And what I remember is waking up from that and the nurse, and for me asking the nurse, was it benign? And
mm,
she said, yes. And I was relieved. And I said, okay, well, now I can rest some more.
right.
4 days later, the news came. So I get a phone call from the surgeon's office, and the young lady says to me, the doctor wants to see you in person and you need to bring somebody with you. And I already knew what that was. I knew it
Right.
wasn't good. My poor father, who was also battling cancer, prostate cancer at the time, is the only person that was around. And so I think that was the hardest part, is getting the news in the office,
Mm,
from the doctor, with my dad, who was already battling his own.
mhm,
So that was hard. The last, one of the poignant things that I remember the doctor saying is, you're 26, um, you'll have to have another surgery, and we're just going to give you, we have to give you, the best chance of survival, now that we know that it's cancer. And he said, it didn't look like it. I put it on my hand. I've never seen a tumor that looked like that was cancerous. And he was already like in practice for about probably 20 years.
okay.
Um, so for me at that point, I remember just, thinking, okay, well, I've got to hold on to something, because now I know this is cancer, and now we've got to go in and have a bigger surgery. And I
Mhm,
prepared for what was coming. For me, it was about, leaning into my faith, because I didn't know what was waiting for me on the other side. I remember reading this amazing book called, A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, and she had a couple of things that for me were helpful, that maybe could be helpful for somebody else. Because in that moment, I was really praying for a miracle. And so in her book, one of the things that she says is she didn't know a miracle was a reasonable thing to ask for. Didn't know it was just a shift in perception.
mhm.
And that hit me, and I said, wow, that's what it is. And then she also said, you recognize there's a power in the universe bigger than you are, who can do for you what you can't do for yourself. And that's what it means to surrender to that higher being. And for me,
Yes.
that's God. So
Wow.
those kinds of things quieted my mind and gave me a whole lot of peace before going into the big surgery. The surgery came, and I was really quite calm. Everybody else around me was really not, but I was. And I ended up removing the breast.
Mhm.
It was a stage 2. It had already traveled into the lymph nodes. They do things a little differently now than they did 31 years ago.
Yes.
So they removed most of my lymph nodes and found that 9 were. And then I had to start chemotherapy. So they referred me to a really great, doctor. And one of the things that I also learned in my journey was that, I know that doctors have tremendous knowledge, but there's something about us knowing our own bodies and
Mhm.
understanding that if something doesn't feel right, or you don't have a good feeling about it, that you should ask more questions, or you should pursue maybe even seeing somebody else if that's the case.
Correct. Totally agree on that. Totally agree.
Yeah. So the oncologist, at that point, had, after I recovered and all of that, um, he actually followed, a study that was happening at the University of Miami without it actually participating, but using the same drugs. And there was different levels, and every level was more than anything that they were giving normal therapy. And I kind of, fought with him a little bit, in the sense that he said, well, I'm just going to give you the lowest. And I said, but I just heard my surgeon say, we've got to give you your best chance of survival. So I would like something more.
Right.
And, he says, no, no, you don't know what that is. And I said, I don't know what that is, but I don't know that I feel comfortable having anything less. And so he did. He gave it to me, which was a very high dosage chemotherapy that they don't use anymore. And
Mhm.
it was quite toxic, actually. But I didn't know that until like 10 years later.
Okay.
So I took my chance, and you know what? It worked out for me. It worked out for me. But it was a long journey. It was, time, that I had to go into the hospital, and I had to get it there, and I had
Mhm.
to, you know, um, wait through the white blood counts coming down, and going into hospital for a very severe blood infection, and having just really 3 or 4 months of really, really arduous, really, really, a time with my body, my health, and the people around me. I will say that, the folks that were by my side during that time were some of the most significant, memories that I have,
Mhm.
because it was my family, it was my friends, it was people that I worked with at the time. I was a restaurant manager, it was people that I worked with at the time. It was like unexpected moments and notes from people that I never thought would reach out. And they were so caring and loving. And I just knew that, this is what I needed to go through, and that God put those people in my path in order to help get me through the
Ex
toughest times.
Mhm.
A dear friend of mine who also had breast cancer before me, I'll never forget that she, when I had to do my very first chemotherapy, and I, had to stay overnight and nobody could stay with me. My mom was taking care of my dad, and my friends were doing, had other, spouses and things like that. And my boyfriend at the time, who was in denial, also could not, you know, kind of put in. But she said, "Hey, I'll stay." And I know she had her 12-year-old at home. She goes, "No, he can stay with his father. I will stay." And I will never forget that. She was an amazing, amazing person. Unfortunately, she passed away about 14 years ago, but she was one of the most significant people in my life, along with my family and
Right.
my friends.
And
So,
perhaps her purpose was
yeah.
to be there for you, right?
Yes, yes, I
Wow.
would agree. I would agree. I think I thought about that actually even today as I was thinking and reflecting more.
Mhm.
That was something significant in my life. I remember being at some point after all of this, kind of happened, me, getting really down, and I guess at that point having some depression for brief time,
Right.
because I was also having issues with my boyfriend at the time. And I remember my cousin coming into my apartment and saying, "What are you doing? Get up right now." She opened up all of the curtains, she opened up the shades, and she said, "No, let's go." And she held my hand and she started praying. She says, "This is the first and last day you're going to do this." And
Mm.
she was right. And I didn't let myself go back there again. So it is so true that you have these significant people in your life that really make a difference, especially um, when you're going through such a tough time. And I feel blessed that when it happened, I had those folks that gathered,
Mhm.
and surrounded me. So I kind of went through. I finished all of my treatments. My dad, unfortunately, got a little bit worse, and um, I will share something really different, but I had a dream, and at those moments, some of my dreams and things were pretty vivid. And unlike other dreams I had ever had before, but I had a dream one point that there were two doves that, went up into the sky, flew, and one of them represented my dad and the other one represented me. I knew that in my dream. At that point, they took flight, and one dropped
Mm.
clearly out of the sky, and one continued to soar. And I knew that that would be my father, and the other would be mine. And that was my sign that you're going to make it, you're going to be okay.
Nice.
And
Oh,
and
that's
that's exactly what
beautiful.
happened. Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So yeah. Yeah, my dad died at the end of that year, and then I said, "You know what? It's time for me to have a new life." My boyfriend and all of that was not happening, and I said, life is short. I am determined to make a new life. At that point, I was really, I think, asking God, I need a new life. I need to walk away from everything that has happened here, and I need like a fresh start. And He gave that to me.
And how old
And
were
I
you
was,
at that time?
I was still, I was only I was 27. I was
Okay.
27. Yeah.
Okay.
So the year had ended. My dad passed away at the end of that year. And then the following year, early into that year, I said, I don't think that I can continue to be here. I would really like to be somewhere else. And I felt that really strongly that my life would be somewhere else. And so I
Mhm.
had an opportunity to come to Orlando for work. And I said, well, then this is what I've been, thinking about, and what has been, in the back of my mind. And it was an amazing time to be able to come and just start new, because I needed that
Mhm.
in the worst way.
Yes, and you found the love you were looking for.
I did, because the challenges for me, having gone through that, is okay. So now I went through all of this.
Mhm.
I I'm here, I made it, but you start to think, so now what's going to happen? Like, will I find somebody? How do I tell someone at the age of 26 what I've gone through, right?
Mhm.
Will they just like leave? Will they be like, no way, I'm not in this? I found a man who's my biggest cheerleader who said, I don't care what has happened. I want to be with you. And, we're 24 years married in, and 2 or 3 years before that. So it worked out really well in that sense.
So after going through basically such a life altering experience, what were your goals now at this point? So, like, what did you hope for your body, your health, your life? Like, what challenges were you like, okay, now what? What do I do? Because now you had this second chance, right?
Right, right. I had a second chance, and like you said, I said, okay, so what do I do, and how do I move forward? One of the things that I found was really, really important to me was
Mhm.
to map that out, and I did that in the form of a vision board.
Okay.
So I set up a vision board and I said, okay, so it's like I'm starting again. So what do I want for the rest of my life? And I
Mhm.
put on there photos of health, things that represented health and
Mhm.
wellness and nutrition. I put a wedding photo up. I had not met my husband yet. And that was one of the things that I wanted. I wanted to be married. I wanted to have children. And I wasn't able to because of the chemotherapy. I didn't know that until much later on. But at the time, that was something on my vision board. And, you know, people don't realize it, but what you put there, you manifest.
That is
And
true.
I got that. I got that. And I remember looking at that vision board years later and going, "Oh my God, what a time that where I was mentally when I did this and how everything sort of manifested in my life." So that was, something that helped me move forward because the challenge of starting in a new place with nobody that you knew,
Mhm.
trying to date somebody, and also wondering what's going to happen. Will I ever have a recurrence of cancer? Do I need to worry about that? How long do I need to worry about that? What about this chemotherapy that was, something they used as, a test? And will I have repercussions with that? And then at one point, I said, I can't worry about this. I have to move on and I have to live my life. And
Mhm.
what will come, I will deal with.
Right. Because you had already, up until that point, you had basically been resilient, right? You had already gone through what you thought was the worst at that point. And so you made
Mhm.
it through that. So you were like, come on, life, just bring it on. I can take it on.
I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready. And it's true because you know what? A few years later, I thought, I started having a little bit of issue with the other breast and they weren't sure. And they were like, oh, it's too dense. It's this. And I said, I don't want to have these MRIs every year and you can't really be sure if there's something going on. And just like what you said, I said, well, now I'm going to take the bull by the horns again. I am going to make a decision to just remove that other breast preventatively. And
Mhm.
that's it. And I don't have to worry about it because otherwise I can't move forward.
Yeah.
And so I did. And, of course, I was, already married. And my husband said, listen, do whatever you think is best for you. And if it means that you could, avoid a recurrence, maybe there's nothing going on, maybe there is, but
Right.
tackle it and and we did. And it was benign, but I don't have any regrets.
And I would think that's a personal choice. That's something that you decide that you want to do for peace of mind, if that's what
Mhm.
you want to do. Because I agree with you. I would assume that you would always have that in the back of your mind. Like, could
Mhm.
it come
Mhm.
back, or how does it? What can I do to kind of
Right.
prevent that from happening? And
Yes.
going to get MRIs all the time, like, who wants to do that?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And
Mhm.
so now it was, you were married, and tell me a little bit about your mom. So what happened with that situation?
Well, my mom at the time, bless her heart, she was taking care of both me and my dad,
Mm.
right? Going through cancer at the same time. And then after that, once my father passed away, she remained in Miami. She was sad that I was leaving, but she remained in Miami. But a few years, maybe I would say 10 years in, maybe, of me being here, she started with dementia. She started forgetting things, and I started to notice, and eventually, fast forward, she was in the apartment for for a while. She had a partner then, much, long after my dad had passed.
Mhm.
But I checked in on her often, and I realized things were getting worse and worse. And ultimately, um, let's see, now we're going maybe what, on 3 years? 3 years ago, or three and a half, she fell, she broke her hip. And of course, the dementia was pretty advanced at the time. And so we ended up, obviously going to the hospital and then moving her into a long-term care facility. She's
Mhm.
not mobile because they were unable to operate for other reasons. And also the dementia was just quite advanced. And I knew that she couldn't be alone. And I was trying to get her up to Orlando,
Mm.
and then she fell, and so I had to rearrange. And so so she's okay, but my going back and forth for many years was what I did, and I still go and see her about once a month, and she's okay, um,
Now, why I bring this up is because at around the time that you and I started to talk about where you were and what was going on, you did mention your mom to me because that was
mhm,
something that was worrying you. Like, was
mhm,
that going to be your future? What, that's
mhm.
kind of the state of mind. So let's talk about the time just right before you joined my program. What was going on
Yes.
in your life? How were you feeling, like physically, emotionally, and mentally at that point?
Yes, and you're absolutely right, because my mom had osteoporosis,
Mhm.
and she had had it for a while, and because of her dementia, couldn't take the medication because she would not have remembered to take it ongoing and those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And my mother was somebody who was active. She walked every day. She walked her little doggy every day, 2, 3 miles sometimes, but
Mhm.
that's really all she did. So when I mean, the audience doesn't know, but you and I had met some years ago through
Yes.
our husbands,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And throughout those years, at one point, I knew you were doing something with folks that were my age. I wasn't quite sure, and then I
Mhm.
started to find out a little bit more eventually. But at that time, before I started your program, um, I was I was running, but not so much. I was doing my jogging. I was, um, doing some workouts, things like that. Nothing really, really, you know, um, comprehensive. But I got my bone density scan because my oncologist wants to make sure everything's still okay and all of that. And I ended up finding out that I had osteopenia. So it's the pre, right? The pre to
Mhm.
osteoporosis. So it worried me. So, this was before I even, this was maybe a couple of years before. So I said, oh, well, I'm going to do a little more. I'm going to do a little more of this and a little more of that, a little more of this, right? And fast forward a few months before we started, I had my second bone density scan. It wasn't horrible, but it was still, going slightly the wrong way. It was
Right.
definitely not getting better. And that's when I said, you know what, I have to do something. And by the end of that year, I said, come the new year, I am going to take charge and I'm going to figure this out. And and I know I told you this, but I'll tell the folks that serendipitously, I think I just ended up with this podcast with this Dr. Lyons, who's a doctor, and she specializes in aging, and she also specializes in nutrition, and then also the muscular system.
Right.
And when I heard her on the Mel Robbins podcast talk about protein and muscle and resistance and why it's so important and that we can build it at any age, I had this huge aha moment, and I said, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for, someone to tell me
Mhm.
this so that I really now know what I need to do. And that's when I said, okay, that's it. I'm calling Catherine.
Yes, and I remember we were over for, I forget what it was, an event, and you said, "I have to talk to you," and I'm like, "Yes." You're like, "I need your help. I need your help. I just
Yeah.
need you to help me." And I have to say, just as a side note, that I love all the clients that I have. They've all had that moment where they just say, "I need your help," like, and I'm like, okay, what do you need, because like you said, that's that moment or that realization where you're like, I need something new. Obviously, what I've
Mm-hmm.
been doing, what I did before is not
Mm-hmm.
getting me what I want. I'm listening to this doctor saying everything about muscle, building muscle, and how it supports the skeletal system, and you need, protein and all these things. So that's like all the signs are pointing in the right direction. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I knew when we had our first conversation, I'm like, she's already had a few signs. She knows what she wants, right? So let's talk about the results. So, what changes did you notice in those first 6 weeks of the program? It was there like a shift
Well,
in energy, mindset, strength? What happened?
yes, it was. It was a shift in mindset because of course I had never had a formal program, right?
Mhm.
And so for me it was like, "Oh, okay, this is like a little routine. I'm getting into it." It was hard in the beginning because I had not done that type of exercise. I was not inactive by any means, but I was now using muscles that I hadn't used and body parts and those kinds of things, right?
Mhm.
And and so then I was like, oh, well, this is great because not only do I get one-on-one time with you, but I also get all of your videos and I can go at my pace and I can get it done and I can rewind and start again if I wanted to. So that for me, that flexibility was really, really nice. Um, I was a little hesitant only because
Mhm.
not of anything that you did
No.
or anything that you presented, but it was all me. And
Yeah.
it had to do with this right arm
Yes.
because of my surgeries and having taken out all the lymph nodes. They told me you can't lift more than 10 pounds on that arm. You can't ever get blood taken or blood pressure on that arm. You have to be really mindful. And
Mhm.
so I have been, right? 10 years maybe after my surgery, I helped somebody move and I lifted a box that was really heavy and I realized it was really heavy. And within 48 hours, I had lymphedema and my arm was like this big and I had to go to therapy and the whole thing. So that scarred me even more because I said, I never want to go through that again.
Mhm.
So the hesitance, and I told you this from the beginning, is like, oh my
She
God, I
did.
can't lift more than 10 pounds. And you were so good. You were like, okay, don't worry. Don't worry. No, no, we're gonna take it easy. And I said, okay, good, good, good. She knows I can never lift more than 10 pounds on this arm.
That everybody that's watching, she literally said that to me. I want to do strength training, but I can never lift more than 10 pounds on this arm. I was like, okay. All right.
Right.
We'll just
Right.
okay, we'll see. We'll see what no, no, no. You don't understand. I cannot do that on this arm. I said, okay.
It's true. It's true. And we're still like, you're talking about the first 6 weeks, right? So everything is still very new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, the first 6 weeks, excuse me, um, you were getting into the groove of everything, and I think you ever, you even sent me a message saying when you were looking at your numbers,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, you were looking at your numbers, and you're like, could it be that that I'm losing inches? And you were like, I checked my numbers once, twice, three times. Could that really be? And I said to you, yes, yes, it can. And you were like, what? You were so blown away by that. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Yes.
fast forward, we get to the 90-day mark,
Mm-hmm.
which is a major turning point, right? Because at
Yes.
that point, you've done what's equivalent to 12 weeks, 3 months. And so now you're way in the groove of things. You know how everything works. You've gotten
Mm-hmm.
some results. So,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of transformation did you experience at your first 12-week mark, at your first 90 days? Was there like a big difference that you felt or you saw?
Yes. And I had to take a couple notes because now you and I have been together a year.
Yes.
So like the first 90 days was already like a long time ago, right? It was a long time ago. So I kind of went back and looked and I was like, oh my gosh, it's nice kind of to check. But well, first of all, I knew that I was feeling more confident right off the bat at the 90-day mark.
Mhm.
That was a given. What I noticed is I was running and I had so much more stamina and so much more endurance than I had ever had before, right? And I even ran I was glad that I looked it up because I was like, oh gosh, that's when this happened. I ran my first 2 mile run
Mhm.
ever. Because
Mhm.
usually they were about 1.3, or things like that. And I had never veered out to do two at one time. And so that was exciting for me. Um, I was holding planks. I was like, oh my gosh, I was doing planks. At first, they were a little modified, and little by little, you started me with this arm. And yes, I
Mhm.
was resistant and I was like trying to baby it. And she's like, you're going to be fine. And one of the things that I love about you is that you remind me, and I'm sure your other clients, you're in a safe space.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
knowing that, I said, okay, yes, she knows. I just need to start to let go of this fear little by little. So now in this first 90 days, I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing like, you know, a little bit of plank here and I'm holding it a little bit longer. And,
Mhm.
I start to see the changes in my body and the measurements and my husband is telling me, honey, you look great. And other people are like, what are you doing? Wow, you look so good. And I'm like,
Yes.
thank you,
I
thank you,
remember that.
thank
I
you.
remember when you said to me, "Oh, I went to Miami," and my friends are like, "What are you doing?" And you were like, "What? What?" And it was
Yes,
in your life that you've kind of looked, as like, role models of what strength training is, or being fit, right? And they are saying to you, what are you doing, girl? Like, you something looks different. What are you doing?
that's right. That's
And
right.
I just want to kind of put it in here that when you first approached me, your main focus was more strength, right? And building muscle, where I do have some clients where they started was maybe more on weight loss. But what happened in the very first 90 days for Raquel, I just want to explain this to everybody, is that her inches, she did lose inches because she was losing unhealthy fat,
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy fat. And so she was building muscle and getting leaner. So all of a sudden, as she's comparing all these photos, she's like, oh, like, so it wasn't so much about the losing weight, because the scale was kind of going up and down. It wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
horrible, but it was the whole fact that you weren't losing muscle and weight. It was kind of the opposite. You were
Mm-hmm.
building muscle and getting rid of bad fat that was
That's right.
lingering in there.
That's right.
So
That's right.
so those first 90 days, what was funny was that when we first started, I said, let's go on this journey for 90 days and see where it takes you. So once we got to the first 90 days, I was like, okay, so, what are you thinking now? Or what are your plans now for the remainder? And she was like, sign me up. I'm up. We're not doing this again. We're not going to continue. I said, oh, okay. Yeah, great. So now that, and like you said, now we're coming to a year. It goes by very fast.
Mm-hmm.
I did
Mm-hmm.
mention that I had other clients who had been with me for a year. You're like, wow, that's a long time. But now that you've gone through it and we've worked together for almost a year,
Mm-hmm.
what do you love most about our work together?
Well, one thing that I already mentioned, which is that you're very mindful about whatever issues someone might have. I mean, we're talking about 55 and over. It could be anywhere between 55 and it could be someone even in their 80s or even more. And
Mhm.
so it's different issues that you might be experiencing, and that you um, create and personalize the exercises and the routines to make sure that that person, one, can do it, and you have modifications, and also let them know when you are maybe having them do something a little more than they're used to. The way that you did with me is to say you're in a safe space,
Right.
so that there's trust, right? There's trust that you're not going to say do this and then it's going to cause some kind of an injury, or I'm going to why did you say that? Why did you do it? No, it's never any of that. It's always very mindful about that person and what they need and what they can do, what their limits are
Mhm.
at that point.
Exactly. Because
That's
really,
one of the
there
big
are no
things.
limits. Wink, wink.
Right,
There are no
right,
limits, but yeah,
right.
to
In the beginning, sometimes there are a little bit. Hmm.
Mhm. To
Hmm.
basically play to your strengths. Because, yeah, in any type of program, anybody that you meet, any trainer, anything, you have to have a level of building that trust. You don't just
Right,
like, just because we were friends didn't really mean anything. It was like,
right,
okay, but are you going to
right.
help me? That kind of thing. So, in 1 year, it's amazing to see, honestly, how far you've come. I mean, like 2 minute planks, full on using the TRX, suspension chair.
Hmm.
So you're not only lifting weights, right? But you're also doing body weight exercises that you probably never even thought you would be doing, using resistance bands, like, also doing
Hmm.
stuff on the exercise ball that you probably never thought you were going to do. So how does your life feel different now, like from your body, energy, confidence, like the overall? How does Raquel feel different? How does Raquel different now than a year ago?
Um, well, I mean, I think now that it's like you said, it's been a year, and I and I've been saying this maybe even before the year,
Mhm.
right? When people are asking me, and I say I have never felt better. And that's really the God honest truth. I have never felt better. So I know that I'm stronger. I know that I have built muscle because I could see it.
Mhm.
Um, I I know that for me, prioritizing exercise is important. I feel like if I don't do it, if I go a day or two because something's going on and I don't do it, I feel a certain way about it, right? Because I don't want to fall back. Um, I find myself telling all the women in my life that I know, start some strength training and up your protein
Yeah.
and up your protein. And they look at me like I've got four heads. And I'm like, okay, let me explain, right?
Yeah.
Um, so the combination of working with you, my physically, I know that I have changed mentally also. It's done wonders for me. Just feeling more confident. And then, just being able to share that with other folks in hopes that they also will, take on some, something for themselves. And because as we get older, we already know the story. We don't want to fall. We don't want to have brittle bones. We don't want to do it. We don't want to have that. And there's a way to avoid that. And
Mhm.
you have to start. You have
Yeah.
to take the first step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even working together, we also discovered that, well, you had a little bit of lower back pain that was
Hmm.
kind of going on. And you kind of discovered that stretching was also very important in the whole process, and
Yes.
how much, pain relief that also brings you. So I mentioned that because I don't want our viewers to think, oh, she only had the breast cancer issue. No, there were other, things involved as well, because you are over 55, and we already know, like
Hmm.
you mentioned, all the things that happen. And lower back pain is one of them, right?
Hmm.
But that is something that we also addressed. And I mean, you still see a chiropractor, so that's good
Yes.
too. But yeah, that was also something that we kind of, you know, fixed along the way, if you want to call it that. Every now
Right.
and then, when you decide to garden for the whole day, that's a different story. And I'm sure those of you out there are like, oh, that's why. Yes, that's why. Right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
when
Yes.
we
Sometimes. And so I'm careful because, like you said, sometimes my back will, and it'll warn me and it'll say, you're doing too much.
Exactly, exactly. And I've said before, previously in other trainings that I do here, that your body does talk to you, and
Hmm.
sometimes it screams at you, right? So
That's right.
when you're in real pain, that's your body screaming. So you really need to listen at that point. But yes,
Hmm.
you definitely have. I've seen the growth throughout this past year, and what would be like if you said you had three takeaways from this journey? What would they be?
So, when I was thinking about that, and I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is I have accomplished more physically than I ever thought I could
Mhm.
in a year. So for me, that was like the big glaring one that says, "Wow, you would have never thought that you could do that." Um, the other would probably be that um, it's not too late to start building muscle, right? And getting in shape. So that was a big also takeaway for me because initially I thought, oh gosh, I'm not 25, and
Mhm.
how do you do that? And so for me, that's a huge takeaway. And another takeaway is for me is just um, the fact that I don't know that I could have done it without you. See,
Aw.
so I could have continued. Oh, but it's true. I could have continued to do a little more workout here, a little more workout there. And you know what? I would have been spinning my wheels, really,
Yes.
because I would not have ever had the results that I've had with you. So that's a huge takeaway that working with somebody who really is invested in you and your health and your growth and and your goals is really important because you've got somebody who's holding you accountable and they also want the best for you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I like what you said earlier when you were saying like that now you had this new life and you had this vision board for the things that you wanted to for yourself. And it kind of reminded me like what I'm always saying specifically to women over 55 is that at some point in your life you do stop dreaming and you start to kind of see things as impossible, right? And when you're
Mm-hmm.
younger, like everything is possible. Like you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, everything, I could do everything. Then you get to a point
Mm-hmm.
where you're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. And then you get to a point where you're like, yeah, I'm definitely not going to be like, I can't even see that happening. Right. So for me, in your whole year, your transformation, the biggest takeaway that I've had and just keeps kind of resonating is that you made it possible. Like you are the walking, basically, slogan of I am possible, right? Like taking impossible, taking that word and changing it to I am possible because you really, really stepped up and committed and did all the work. And you're still progressing and doing things that you never thought possible, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
now,
Yes.
what wisdom I think is always a great gift. Like I loved listening to my grandparents, especially my grandmother, always giving advice, even if I didn't like it at the time, but later on, it kind of resonates.
Right.
So,
Right. That's right.
what advice would you give to another woman who's maybe struggling after cancer and feeling unsure about her next step?
Um, so one of the things that I would say is listen to your body. Listen to your body because you know what's going on and you know when something is not right.
Mhm.
And even if you've already had cancer and you're struggling, there could be something else going on. And so you want to make sure that you, one, listen to your body and be your own advocate. I gave a couple of examples when I wasn't 100% aligned with maybe what the doctor, might
Mhm.
have said. And I pushed a little bit, said, well, no, I think we should go this. And one of the things that I actually, now that I'm saying that, I forgot to mention was that 14 years after my breast cancer, I had thyroid cancer.
Oh, okay.
So, and the reason I say that now because it just jarred me is that at the time when they did the scan, they found a lump in my neck, and my oncologist says, "Oh, well," I said, "Well, what is that?" And he said, "Well, it's probably nothing. It's let's wait 6 months and we'll see. We'll redo it." And I go, "But why would we wait 6 months? Why?" "Well, because it's, it's so it's kind of common things that happen there near the thyroid, but it's okay." So I said, "Well, if we had gone this an extra 6 months and that was still there, what would you do?" And he said, "Well, then I'd order a biopsy." And I said, "Well, can you order a biopsy
Yeah.
now?"
Yeah.
So, and I did, and I kind of went, and when that happened, and we did it, and it ended up being that I had to have surgery, and it was malignant, which, by the way, was, to me, at that point, and I don't want to make any light of it, but for me, compared to what I had gone through, was more a walk in the park compared to my breast cancer.
Right.
But I said to him, he said to me, "I can't believe it." And I said, "So how many?" I said, "Do you have other patients?" He goes, "I've had other patients where I've told them, let's repeat it in 6 months." He goes, "I won't do that anymore. I will have them go get a biopsy." So I think you have to be your own self advocate. And so
Mhm.
that's one of the pieces of advice that I would give someone who is battling breast cancer. I'd also say to lean on their faith and what their belief system is, because that is what can get you through the toughest times.
Mhm.
Um, and I believe that God never gives you more than you can handle,
Right.
right? So that's another idea of what you can do to get through those tough times. Um, I'd also say maybe find a group of women that, maybe it could be a support group or it could be friends that are your supporters, that are there to help in whatever way. Sometimes it's just because you need to chat. Sometimes it's someone that you need to maybe just be with so
Right.
that you're not alone,
Mhm.
or you need a favor, whatever the case may be. Find that person or find those folks and surround yourself with people that are also going to help lift you up. And
Correct.
I think that's super important. And also know that no matter what's happening in your life, no matter what stage you're in, okay, um, you are stronger than you think you are.
Mhm.
And hopefully having a mindset of, no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. And I am not going to take it, sitting down.
Mhm. Mhm. I love
Let's fight.
I love that. I love that. So, Raquel, of course, thank you from the very bottom of my heart, for sharing so openly and vulnerably with us today. Like I said, you are a living example of what's possible when you decide to choose yourself, even after life throws the hardest challenges your way, right? And I think that's kind of what one of the things that you just mentioned too. And to anyone listening, Raquel's story is a reminder that it's never, and I emphasize never, too late to transform, right? Transformations can happen at any point in your life. It's never too late to transform. It's never too late to heal. And it's never too
Mhm.
late to thrive, to keep going, to get up in the morning, to get out of bed, to just keep fighting the fight. That's just the way it is. Life is life, right? And
Mhm.
it's a gift, as a lot of us know. We are not promised tomorrow. So you have to just
Mhm.
keep moving. Keep on keeping on, is what they say.
Keep on keeping on. Move forward. We
If
have to keep moving.
if you're navigating your own comeback story, right? Maybe you have one that's brewing, know that you're not alone, right? And that there is always a path forward. It's just taking that step that sometimes you need a little nudge, you need a helping hand. Maybe you need a community like this, right? To help you to kind of take that step forward. And I don't want anybody to go too far. Yeah, we're up just about done, but we've got more inspiration coming your way next week. I'll be joined by Laura Carey Blackman, and she's our menopause expert who's going to dive into what's really going on with our bodies and how to navigate this powerful phase of life, right? With strength and grace, even after 55. Because if you tuned in last year when we had Laura, you know that many menopause symptoms can linger way into your 70s. So if you're still feeling those hot flashes and you're like, what? I mean, really? Yes, it's possible. Exactly. Plus, registration will open up next week for the new 555 challenge. This challenge is made for women over 55, of course, and it's all about building strength with 5-minute workouts, simple nutrition, because we need nutrition, right? We can't just work out with no nutrition, and to support you losing up to 5 pounds. So if that's something that's in on your vision board, we can help you get there. And the best part, registration is completely free. Okay, so definitely stay tuned in my in the Facebook group, the Dance Fit Hub, or via email, and just get ready to join us. And as always, here is this is my cheers cup, my toast. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, and may we raise them. Right? That's what I'm always all about because I still have my two girls, of course. So happy Women's History Month, everyone. If you're watching the replay, tell us in the comments that you were here. Of course, I always like to know that you passed by and what you liked most about Raquel's story. I'd love to know what you thought. And with that, again, thank you, Raquel, for being on, and everyone
Thank you.
have a great night.
Thank
Bye.
you.